So Renfield's been out for a little over a week now, but I still wanted to do a slightly longer review about this film because there's some things that I've been thinking about with regards to it, and some things that I thought were really good in this film, even though if you watched my quick review about it, I said it was good and I enjoyed myself, but I didn't feel it was as good as some people were saying it was, or I didn't enjoy it as much as some people did. But to get things started, I wanted to talk about who I'm going to say are our two leads. Nicolas Cage's Dracula and Nicholas Hoult as Renfield. Now, right off the bat, Nicolas Cage was fantastic in this role. I mean, he just played it so well. It was creepy, but it wasn't, it wasn't the Dracula we know or we've seen before, in the sense that, you're thinking the dark cape and the spooky and the scary. And yes, he can be a charmer at times too. But Cage just had something to it. It's almost like, think about it, he brings the devil out in the character. And the best way I can describe it is, if you've watched the show Lucifer, which is a great show, you should check it out if you haven't. In that show, one of Lucifer's main abilities is he's able to get people to tell him what they desire. And that's how they solve cases and stuff like that. Thinking about it, it kind of feels like this version of Dracula, Nicolas Cage has the same thing, because he can sweet talk and charm people and promise them stuff. He's the deceiver. And it just feels like that's part of this version of Dracula, is being able to trick you and get you to give up something you want the most, even though you're thinking you're going to gain something you want the most. And I mean, that is part of the whole story, which I'll touch on that in a little bit. But I think he plays all these different levels really well. And I mean, the biggest compliment I can give, I have to shout out the makeup artists and makeup crew, because I'm sure there's CG involved. But man, the makeup is fantastic. I mean, it looks like, he starts off at the beginning of the movie, something happens to him, which is why they have to move and go to a different location. And you just see him gain his power back, or become, shall we say, himself again, good looking again, human again. I don't know. It kind of has, it's kind of like the Mummy, but the Brendan Fraser Mummy, where every time he would get energy from people or take back something from people, he'd grow a little more, he'd look a little more normal to us. And the CG in that movie was good for the time, but here it just looks fantastic. And I mean, it's just, I really am impressed with what they could do. I mean, I knew they could do good stuff, but if there's any CG involved, it doesn't look like it. Now, I thought this as I was watching the movie. I can't remember if it was Nicolas Cage or Ben Schwartz. I'm pretty sure it was Ben Schwartz, actually. But I think Nicolas Cage could play not a proper version, maybe not a dramatic version, definitely not on Heath Ledger's level, but I think Nicolas Cage could play a version of the Joker. I mean, he looks great in this as Dracula, and just the way he acts and stuff, I feel like, maybe give him not necessarily a serious Batman script, but maybe he could pull something off. Again, I'm not sure I can't remember completely if he's the one that I thought of, and I mean, he does it so well, and he's definitely, I mean, this is Renfield's movie. It's called Renfield. But Nicolas Cage definitely steals every scene he's in as Dracula. He's fantastic. It's one of those castings that you have to admit, when you first hear it, you're like, really? But when you see it, it's like, okay, I see what they were going for, and that was a good choice. moving on to Nicholas Hoult. He's good. I mean, the way I'm hesitating, I know it sounds like I'm like, but he's not. No, he's good. And the way his chemistry works with Nicolas Cage is good. His chemistry with Awkwafina in general is good. And I mean, you can tell, for the most part, you can tell this is a tortured soul. But I feel like he really comes into the character, and it really does more with the character, like when it starts to climax. When you get to the end of the second act, or midway through the second act into the third act, where the whole idea of the movie is starting to come to fruition. You're starting to realize, I guess, what the message of the movie is, or the take of the movie is. And yeah, he does it. He plays Renfield well. He's funny at times. The action scenes are good. His uncertainty, and I mean, you can definitely see him grow as a character from being subservient and I'm going to do whatever you want, I can't escape you, to be coming into his own. And I mean, I think that's pretty obvious based on the trailers and just this type of movie, that's the type of thing that would happen. But for me, it's really him. Nicholas Hoult is really how he interacts with everybody else. That's where his performance shines. That's where it feels the best. And that also leads into something else. As this movie started, I couldn't help it. I mean, I'm sure this is what you're going to get. You'll get this a lot ever since this movie came out. But at the very beginning, he's doing voiceover and telling you his backstory, which I love how they do the backstory. And they actually, like, I just watched the original Dracula earlier this year, or it was earlier this year or end of last year. So that was so fresh in my mind. But I love how they reshot scenes that look exactly like that in black and white to tell this story. I was not expecting that. I thought that was great. And to see just his evolution, to see, I don't know, Nicholas Hoult just did a good job of showing why this would happen, the progression of Renfield. And it really does lead into the overarching idea of the movie, that is, who is the real monster? And I feel like, yeah, we've gotten that story before. We've probably gotten it before. But I also feel like this is a unique or a different approach to it. Because we've seen Dracula before as the villain from the original black and white movies. From the stories, we've seen him as a charmer, you know, as the victim. We've seen many versions of Dracula. And I'm just, to be honest, I'm guessing with most of these because I haven't watched every version of Dracula. But it feels like, you know, this, I can't remember a time, and I'm probably totally wrong. If you can think of one, leave it in the comments, let me know. I'll admit when I'm wrong. But where it was the sidekick or the assistant was the one that you start to realize, you're like, maybe the monster's not really a monster. You know, and it does kind of ask this question. As he says, it's all about toxic relationships in the movie. And yeah, it does kind of ask, who's the real victim when it comes to that? Excuse me. Not to say that, I'm not getting into that, but it does talk about that. It talks about who is the real monster. Is it the people doing things? In this case, is it Dracula for killing people, for trying to survive? Or is it Renfield, who gave up everything, who's actually bringing him people, who's enabling him to do these things? But yeah, so there's a lot more to this movie. The more I think about it, the more I'm talking, the more I realize there's a lot more to this movie than I originally thought, which kind of makes me feel like maybe I need to watch it again just to look at these things again. But yeah, I'm not going to go to the theaters to see it again. But trying to think. Anyway, moving on to Awkwafina. She's fine. She does a good job. But to be honest, I feel like her character's bland. I feel like you need to do something different with her. Quickly going back, I realized I did get off track. And with the beginning, what I wanted to say, or what I was starting to say, was it felt like Deadpool. With his monologuing his past, the voiceover stuff, and even throughout the movie, I just got Deadpool vibes. And like I said, I'm sure a lot of movies will be compared to Deadpool when they do stuff like that, because there was no real fourth wall breaking per se. It was narration, but I still got those feelings. But anyway, back to Awkwafina. Like I said, yeah, she's fine. She's good at what she needs to do. She's funny at times, especially when she's interacting with Nicholas Hoult. Those two together, that was good chemistry and good laughs. But as a character, I wanted something different. I felt like you just need to do something different. The character, it's a character we've seen a million times over. And it just, I don't know. Their scenes felt like it slowed the movie down for me. Now, the big surprise of this movie, I think, again, Nicholas Cage was kind of a surprise in how good he was, especially just in general. But I think for me, the biggest surprise was Ben Schwartz, because I can't remember seeing him playing a villain. I can't remember him voicing a villain either. But man, is he crazy as a villain. Especially when you get closer to the end and stuff starts to happen. It just, man, he's crazy. And I mean, you almost don't want to say it, but I love the guy. I love the fact of how insane and crazy and bonkers he is. And he really does feel like, actually, you know what? Yeah, maybe not a movie Joker, but he feels like he could be a television Joker. Much more cartoony, much more comic booky. That's the type of Joker he could be. And I'd love to see that. Again, maybe not in a feature film, because I can already see everyone or hear all the complaints about that. But you put him in a Batman TV show, or you put him in a TV show that involves Joker, and you make him the Joker, I think he would knock it out of the park. The other cast members, they were fine. They were good. I thought the look of the film was good. It definitely had a very dark, goth feel to it. And that was exactly what this movie needed. The lighting was interesting. And yeah, the sound effects were good. The music was good. The fight scenes were fantastic. I like the blood and gore was funny most of the time. I mean, some really funny kills, but it was so fake. And I'm sure that was the whole point of it. So yeah, I know I rambled a good bit. I do apologize for that. But thinking back on it, I think there's more to this movie than I originally thought there was. And I think I had a much more entertaining time than I originally thought too. So, with all that being said, what would my official ranking for this film be? Well, that's a tough one. The thing that keeps popping up in my mind is Civilian, because there's a lot in this movie that's good, and there's a lot to enjoy, but it's definitely not for everyone, especially since it's rated R. And again, the Awkwafina stuff, for me, those slower moments, well, they slow the movie down for me. But there's a lot of good stuff in it. And the other thing that I think kind of knocks it down a little bit for me is I don't get taken out of movies much. But there was one question that I kind of had to ask myself. Well, two questions I asked myself. One was, does Dracula not wonder where Renfield is when he's not serving his master? I mean, that just, there were times where I'm like, why? What you know, you mean to tell me you haven't realized what's been going on at certain times? Doesn't he suspect? And also kind of like, okay, where does the money come from? Now, not a big one, but just, you know, one of those things that I kind of wondered about. So yeah, definitely would say this movie is a civilian for me. Yeah, I feel like there was something else I was thinking about this film, but I'm gonna cut it here. If I think of it, I'll put it in the comments or something. But thanks for sticking with me through this review. I know this definitely isn't one of the smoothest ones I've done, but I wanted to at least get some more thoughts out about this film. Oh, I do remember real quick, again, sorry for the choppiness, but that's what happens when you just say what you think and you don't really edit it. One of the things I did like about this movie was some of the lore they added to Dracula. Just like, we're just so used to him being able to drink blood. But in here they add, you know, this type of blood is not as good for him compared to this blood, and they explain why, and it makes sense. So, now, with all that being said, what do you think? Have you seen Renfield yet? If so, what did you think about it? Did you think this movie was hilarious? Did you hate this movie? Were you in the middle like me? Or, if you haven't seen it yet, do you want to see it more now? Or are you going to stay away? Whatever the case, let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. The goal for this year, I really want to reach 100 subscribers. So if you're not a member, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's not much, doesn't take much effort. And until our next review or our next video, remember, enjoy what you love, read what you love, and let's all work for a better fandom. I'll see you next time.